Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. As promised, I'm going to be making a video on little Mrs. Van der Crazy here, Van der Lion. And before I continue, if you can help support the channel, join my local or Patreon, or you can help by liking, sharing, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It's becoming harder and harder for me to make videos, and any help support is much appreciated. Anyway, back to the main story. So, a British paper today has reported that little Miss van der Leyen will become the next head of NATO. If this is true, she will be the ultimate puppet of the deep state, ultimate puppet of Biden, ultimate puppet of Congress, the military industrial complex. You know, she is the darling bud of those guys. Stoltenberg is basically going to be chewed up and spat aside because Stoltenberg has lost all credibility with his massive Ukraine failure. He tried to be a major puppet of the United States, but he's run out of favors because Stoltenberg has not been very good when it comes to public announcements, and he always puts the foot in now and then. However, von der Leyen is a different animal. She, you know, constantly uh, comes and speaks the same rhetoric that Biden does. She is the darling bud of the United States deep state, and she is what put, basically, she is the main reason why Europeans are falling blindly towards US goals and imperialism. So she would be the perfect puppet of the United States, and they can't do any wrong but to hire her soon as possible. So the reports say that she could join NATO as fast as this October. And this is basically means two things. Number one, she could be kicked out of EU because the EU leaders have realized that this woman, who is unelected, by the way, has completely driven EU down the wrong path. She has pushed for sanctions. EU has basically put over like 50, 60 billion towards Ukraine, and the US has put over 100 to 150 billion towards Ukraine, and she is basically bankrupting EU and really doing it badly. Not only that, she has basically standing up in front of the EU members. She'd be standing up from the Europeans, saying that, promising that Russian ruble will be destroyed, Russia will be destroyed. None of that's happened. She has basically put Europeans in a very bad situations where their fall in living standards is happening as we speak. European companies are being destroyed. German industry is being destroyed. European industry is being destroyed. The euro is being destroyed, all down to her policies. So it could be that she could be forced out of the EU. And there's also some scandals happening around her as well, especially with Qatar. So it could be that she could be forced out of the EU, and what better job waiting for her than to be the head of NATO? And she would be the perfect puppet for NATO. So this is what's happening. So in the meantime, she is basically sending out her usual rhetoric when it comes to China. She is joining Macron in a trip to China. So Scholz has gone to China by himself. The Prime Minister of Spain has gone to China by himself, and Macron wanted to go to China by himself. And guess what? Miss von der Leyen, or shall I say Mrs. von der Leyen, Van der Crazy, called up Macron probably in the middle of the night, and she was like, "So, you're next to go to China, are you?" And Macron's like, "Yes, yes, I'm going to China." And she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna join you for this trip." And Macron is like, no, nope, sorry, you don't have a choice. I'm joining you. You don't have a choice." And Macron's like, but wait. And she puts the phone down. So it looks like she's kind of joined this trip with Macron, which Macron really didn't want. He wanted to speak to President Xi by himself. and looks like she's just jumped on like a stowaway. You know, like when those pirate ships that go around the world. Sometimes you have these stowaways hiding in the cargo and stuff, and illegal immigrants here and there. This is what she's doing. She's becoming a stowaway to Macron's trip. And you know what's going to happen, right? You know, Macron's going to be talking to President Xi, and she's going to be the eyes and ears of the US. She's going to be the eyes and ears of Biden, because you know when Schultz goes to talk to President Xi, it's not. This is done in a private room. You know, none of what's been spoken about is released to the press. They only see what comes out of the official press reports afterwards. So she's going to be in the room. She's going to be watching everything Macron says, and she's going to be making sure Macron says the right things. When I say right things, she's going to make sure Macron talks about Ukraine. She's going to make sure Macron talks about human rights. She's going to make sure Macron makes an absolute fool of himself in front of President Xi. And this is her role, and it's her role to be the eyes and ears as well for the United States. So she's there as a spying mission, basically. So recently she's come out and she's done a press conference, and she's basically talking about, she wants to decouple or de-risk from China. China is still a threat. She's talking about human rights and all sorts of rhetoric. And the Chinese EU ambassador blast her. You can see the blast of her siding with the US hardliners. She's basically siding with the US hardliners and destroying the European economy in that process. So he's speaking the hard truths. So I want to talk about the last time she spoke to President Xi, and last time she spoke to President Xi was over the phone. And after she spoke to him, she released this on her Twitter. And she says, China must. Can you see the rhetoric she used? China must. You know, when you get invited to speak to somebody, like somebody important, say for instance, I speak to President Biden, for example, and I put something like this on my Twitter saying, President Biden must do this, must do that, must do this, must do that. You know, he must do it. 'Cause the language she uses is absolute rhetoric. You know, you cannot be talking like that to the head of state of China, somebody as powerful as President Xi. And she's obviously doing it to please her American masters. And look at what she says. China must stop unjustified trade measures against Lithuania. This is because Lithuania have completely destroyed the one China policy and started recognizing Taiwan. So this is what Lithuania has done. Um, she says, lift sanctions against MEPs. So the only reason China put these sanctions on these MEPs is because these MEPs put sanctions on China first, and it was a tit for tat situation. So when these MEPs put sanctions on China, what do you want China to do? Just sit back and take it? So those sanctions were in retaliation to Europeans placing sanctions on China first. Then she addresses all of these so-called human rights stuff in China as well. And you don't go to another country and start pointing fingers at them, point to them about human rights and stuff. Because at the end of the day, everybody has human rights issues. United States has got human rights issues. Even the European have got human rights issues, which they like to kind of put under the carpet. So basically, human rights has been used as a weapon to attack other countries when it suits them. They will ignore certain countries' human rights, for example, Israel. They will ignore what's happening in Palestine. Yet, basically, they will basically start talking about human rights against countries they don't like, again, especially with China. So it says here, improve access and conditions to EU companies in the market. Again, this is down to von der Leyen. There was supposed to be an agreement to be signed between China and EU. And I remember when Merkel was around at the time, and she was about to leave office, and she basically arranged this deal that's been in negotiations with China for over 10 years. And this deal was supposed to be signed and ratified, and this would have given EU access to China, in terms of EV market and many other industries in China. It would have given European companies an even, what you call, an even playing field with China. So there wouldn't be any need for um, joint companies and stuff like that. And so this will give China obviously access to Europeans, and Europeans have full access to China. And this agreement was ready to be signed and ratified, ready to go. And the time when this got signed, back when um, I believe it was Merkel, and she arranged this deal to be done. And she did it at a time when Trump left office and Biden was just coming in. So this was around November, December time, 2 years ago, and just before the Biden administration were coming into office. So the timing was perfect. And she thought by doing it during this time, there's not going to be much US interference. However, they didn't really look at the fact that von der Leyen was in charge of the EU at the time. And she has basically put a spanner in the works of this agreement. The US has probably put her to one side and said, you know what, von der Leyen, you need to cancel this agreement. You need to put it in the back burner. And recently, she has said that this, agreement is not going to be signed by the EU. She said China must do this, China must do that, and she put a big list of laundry basket items to China. And she said this is not going to be signed. And it's been like 2 or 3 years now, and the Chinese have pretty much forgotten about it. So they they have realized that while she's in power, this agreement will never be signed. And Chinese have been going about their business anyway, building up their own economy. And it's the European economy that's actually suffering. So it's the Europeans that need China more than China needs Europeans. So now she's obviously clamoring back to go to China to get what she can from China. But at the same time, she wants to basically throw all these rules and regulations. She wants to throw this rhetoric, human rights to China at the same time. But in the same time, she wants China to give her handouts, give her some help, give her some money. Diplomacy doesn't work like that. If you want something from someone, it needs to be a win-win situation. I'm not going to go next to my next door neighbor and say to him, "Listen, you must do this, you must do that, you must, do this, you must do that. You have human rights issues. Your house stinks. Your wife is ugly. This and that." Do you think he's going to trade with me? Do you think he's going to tell me to get the hell out? This is this is what she's doing. She's basically insulting China at the same time, and then at the same time, begging for work, begging for money, begging for access to the Chinese market. And real life doesn't work like that. I want to show you this Twitter feed, and so many people are replying to it. And everybody in her Twitter feed, at least we have intelligent people there, people are saying, what century do you think it is that China must open its market to foreign companies? And they're saying von der Leyen is like an actress staging a show. um, um, you never see real European leaders from Macron and Scholz and Draghi speak in such nasty, childish, foolish way. And people are like, must, who the F do you think you are? And everybody I see here, everybody here, EU must stop telling other countries what to do. And you can see this one at the end. Tone down the rhetoric, lady. Talking tough normally doesn't work with countries such as China. And I love this kind of and I love this thing where they're trying to hang this guy and this with sanctions, and and these sanctions are basically not working. This guy's still alive. This guy's obviously Russian, and everyone's like thinking, well, why are these sanctions not working? And Russia's just, they just being their usual savage Russians, like, well, you can do as much as you can with us when it's not working. So you can see, like, all of these people, everyone, about majority, about 90% of the replies on Twitter are intelligent people telling her to calm the F down and stuff. She can't talk like that to a world leader. So it's not just it's not just China basically complaining. The whole world is basically complaining of how much of a puppet she is. So you can see this article here, von der Leyen in line for NATO's top job. This is like a match made in heaven. Um, So all of this goes going on while Germany's debt reaches all-time high, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Germany has spent more than 800 billion on energy subsidies because it's lost access to cheap Russian gas and oil, and it's spending a lot of money building up its infrastructure to receive LNG. And it's also subsidizing a lot of the companies, a lot of the people as well. And Germany, as a rich country, is long in the past because one of the things that Europeans have been rising is because they had access to cheap gas and oil from Russia, and they also had access to cheap goods from China as well. And this has helped the European economy. But without Russian gas, they are not going to be competitive like with the rest of the world. They're not going to be competitive with China. They're not going to be competitive with USA and the rest of the world, like ASEAN as well. And and you will see that German economy is just going to go further down. And German economy is basically what drives the EU economy as well. So if Germany goes down, the rest of Europe will pretty much follow. So I've showed you that the European EU Commission told the president to get a better speechwriter, which was actually quite a good response. First of all, I don't even know why she's coming along with Macron. I think the Chinese, they know she's been basically being anti-Chinese and giving a lot of anti-Chinese rhetoric. However, they cannot refuse her to come. If she wants to come, they cannot refuse her to come. But it will probably be a very cold welcome in China for her. They're not going to greet her with open arms. They're not going to give her like the Queen's access. They'll probably just give her the bare minimum. They'll probably give Macron the bare minimum as well. And they have to do it because it's what you call diplomacy. You have to be diplomatic with people with you that you like, but you also have to be diplomatic with people that you don't like. You have to find ways to get along. You have to obviously find ways to trade and make money and stuff like that. So the Chinese are not going to refuse her coming to China. If she wants to come to China, she can, but they're not going to give her the warm welcome. For example, if Putin was arriving in China, for example, they would, with Putin, they would given a king's entrance. But with von der Leyen, they'll probably just give a very, very basic entrance. So you can see her speech here. She gives a warning to China over Ukraine. She's obviously going to be talking a lot about Ukraine when he goes to China. She's going to be talking about Ukraine. She's going to be talking about human rights. She's going to be talking about all the stuff the US wants her to talk about. Real insulting China in front of President Xi Jinping's face. And I can tell you that right now, people in China do not want her to come. And I can imagine that when she flies to China and then flies back to Europe, she's going to put something on Twitter saying China must do this, China must do that, China must do this. Absolutely unacceptable. I mean, who put her in charge? She's not even elected. So this is all happening while Paris is burning. So Macron is choosing probably the worst time to go to China while Paris is actually burning. I mean, you would think as a leader, you will try and stabilize what's happening in Paris first before flying off to other countries. This means that Macron must be really desperate because the economy in France must be absolutely tanking. And Macron feels that he's got no choice. He's got to go to China and work out some deals because he's taken a lot of business people with him as well, trying to see if he can make some deals in China, trying to make some money in China because things are getting really desperate in France. And without China's help, he's going down. So this is why he's going, even though the France is burning, Paris is burning, which is the worst time to fly to another country. I feel that he's got no choice but to go. So you can see here again, China lashes out at von der Leyen over her fiery remarks. And this is like the worst thing to do before flying off to China, guys. I mean, this is like the worst thing. If you're about to fly to another country, last thing you want to do is basically give it all that, talk a lot of rhetoric, insult that country that you're going to be visiting, really puts a dampener in things, really puts bad taste in people's mouths. And the Chinese are going to be defensive when she arrives. The Chinese are going to be like, all right, what do you want? They're going to be very, very cold to her. If you're going to be insulting the Chinese before you even arrive, and the Chinese know this. This is basically headlines in all the Chinese papers as well. The Chinese are not stupid. They know what she's saying. They know. They know exactly she's a puppet of the United States. They know that she's doing the bidding of Biden. They know she's there to spy on Macron and also to spy on the Chinese and to report back to Biden. And but unfortunately, they have no choice. They have to accept her because she's the head of the EU, and they are one of the biggest trading partners with the EU, and they don't want to completely decouple from EU as well. So they have no choice but to get her in, but they will just do the bare minimum with her. And that's it, guys. I think I'll leave you as that. Let me know what you guys think of van der Leyen. Do you see her becoming the next boss of NATO? And what do you think she's going to say to President Xi when she meets him face to face? And what do you think she's going to put on Twitter when she comes back? Let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know what you think of von der Leyen. I'll see you in the next video.